Summary of The Boys in the Boat by Daniel James Brown. The United States was hit by the Great Depression in the 1930s. A big part of the American population was out of work, and both business and farming were in bad shape. During the 1930s, rowing was one of the most popular games in the country. It was as popular as football or basketball is today. Most of the best boat programs in the country were at East Coast schools like Harvard and Yale. Adolf Hitler came to power in Germany around the same time. Joseph Goebbels, who was Hitler's Minister of Propaganda, told him that hosting the 1936 Olympic Games in Berlin would be a big PR win. By doing so, the Third Reich would appear to be a kind, modern country, even though it was killing non-Aryans and making plans for war and dominance in Europe. In the early 1930s, a young student named Joe Rance went to the University of Washington. He was shy and unsure of himself. Joe came from a working-class family in a small town. Because of this, he didn't feel like he fit in with his richer, more privileged friends. Joe's mother, Nellie, died when Joe was young, and his father, Harry Rance, was a bad person who had left Joe more than once. Harry married Thula La Follette after Nellie died. He had several children with her and then chose to move out with Thula and his younger children, leaving Joe to take care of himself. Because of his hard life, Joe grew up alone but very capable of taking care of himself. He chopped wood to make money and fished in rivers to get food. Somehow, he managed to get good grades all through high school. Joe was also going out with Joyce Simdars. Joe tried out for the crew team at the University of Washington. The team was led by Al Ulbrichtson, who is very well known. Ulbrichtson thought that rowers should be good at everything they do. He also said that trying out for crew would be hard work and take a whole year. Joe, on the other hand, made the team by the end of his freshman year, in part because he was used to working hard and being in pain. Joe also benefited from Tom Bowles, the freshman coach, and the world-class Shells rowing boats, built by George Yeoman Pocock, an English boat builder who moved to Washington in the 1920s. With Ulbrichtson, Pocock, and Bowles, the University of Washington's boat program was becoming known across the country. On the West Coast, its biggest foe was the UC Berkeley crew team, which was led by the charismatic Kai Ebright. In April of Joe's freshman year, he and the other freshmen ran a race against the freshmen from Cal. They won by a wide margin, which was a good sign for their future over the next 3 years. Joe and the freshmen also participated at the Hudson Regatta in Poughkeepsie, New York, where they beat better-known East Coast teams and won. Adolf Hitler was getting ready to host the 1936 Berlin Olympics around the same time. Goebbels told people to build a huge Olympic stadium and get rid of all the signs of Nazi oppression in Berlin. Romani families were forced to leave Berlin because they had been mistreated badly by the Nazis. Sadly, most of them were later killed in Nazi death camps. Goebbels also made sure that writers who came to Berlin for the Olympics couldn't talk to local Jews about how bad things were for them under Hitler. In the meantime, Hitler hired Leni Riefenstahl to make films that praised fascist ideas. Around the middle of the 1930s, there were international efforts to stop people from going to the Berlin Olympics. These efforts were led by political activists who saw how dangerous Hitler was to the world. But Avery Brundage, who was head of the American Olympic Committee and was also an anti-Semite, said that he would not consider a boycott. Joe, on the other hand, worked hard during his college summers to make money for the next school year. He still didn't get along with his dad, stepmom, and half-siblings. Thula kept Joe from seeing the rest of his family, even though they lived in Seattle, close to where he went to school. During Joe's sophomore year at the University of Washington, 1934 to 1935, he was easily distracted. This was partly because of his sad home situation and partly because he still didn't feel like he fit in there. Ulbrichtson was determined to send a team from Washington to the Olympics in 1936, so he tried putting different players together. He started to realize that even though the program had many skilled rowers, his students weren't working together to achieve the synchronicity and close cooperation, in a word, swing, needed to win an Olympic gold medal. In April 1935, Washington teams beat Cal, but Washington's senior team, which didn't have Joe on it, didn't win at the Hudson Regatta. Joe worked on the Grand Coulee Dam with some of his friends during the summer of 1935. Joe started to realize that he didn't feel as out of place at Washington as he thought he did because many of his friends also came from working-class backgrounds. Many of Joe's teammates became close friends with him, which made him a better team player and a better rower. When Joe went back to school in the autumn, he became friends with Pocock, who told him that rowing in swing with your partners is like going to church. Ulbrichtsen tried out different groups of rowers in the fall and spring. Eventually, he settled on a mix of sophomores, juniors, and seniors, including Joe. Ulbrichtsen's tests paid off when the Washington varsity team crushed the competition on both the East and West Coasts and earned a spot on the American Olympic team. Joe and his team faced a number of problems at the Berlin Olympics. Don Hume, the team's best player, got very sick on the trip across the ocean to Germany. Also, the team was distracted by all the fun things to do in Berlin, which, thanks to Goebbels, was now seen as a beautiful, accepting city by people from other countries. The team made it to the finals by beating England in a previous round. Even though they were put in the worst lane for the final race and their coxswain, Bobby Mach, didn't notice that the race had started, the American team beat the other teams and won Olympic gold. Joe was so happy about what his team had done. After years of feeling alone and uncertain, he finally felt like he was a part of something great. Brown says that when the Americans beat the competition, they also gave a strong blow to Hitler's fake scientific theories of Nazi superiority, which foretold that Hitler would lose World War II. Back in the United States, Joe married Joyce, his girlfriend. Many of the people on the 1936 American rowing team stayed close friends for the rest of their long lives and had successful careers in many different areas. Joe was married to Joyce his whole life, and he worked for Boeing for a long time and did well there. He died in the 2000s. Most people didn't know much about his life, but those who did were moved by it.
About the author. Brown grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. Later, he went to Berkeley to study English writing. He went to UCLA and got his M.A. in English. After that, he taught at San Jose State University and Stanford University. Brown's first book, Under a Flaming Sky, The Great Hinckley Firestorm of 1894, came out in 2006. He had taught for a long time. The book did well, so Brown was able to write The Indifferent Stars Above, 2009, which is about the life of Sarah Graves, who was part of the Donner Party. Brown now spends all of her time writing, and she lives in Seattle, Washington.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.